in faith and worship to you. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. We live in a world that cares a lot about appearance. Appearance is everything. Appearance is everything. And so, it doesn't matter if you're broke, just don't appear like you're broke. Appear like you're rolling in dough. I had an uncle once who advised me, and he told me, Wainaina, this is now man-to-man advice, a man who has gone ahead of me. He says, never show weakness. Wisdom to the young man. He says, it doesn't matter if you've not eaten lunch. He was a hustler in Nairobi with a lot of just different businesses going on. And he was like me when even, things used to be really hard. I would still walk around with a toothpick. I don't know if you guys do that here. In Kenya, if you have a toothpick, it means you've had some good meat for lunch. And he's like, just look like you're prospering at all times. Never show weakness. That was an old man. He actually sadly passed away a couple of years ago. But whatever advice he was giving me, clearly the new generation has come in and has taken that advice to the next level through social media posts, where everything is always amazing. Because appearance seems to be all that people care about, all that we care about today. That problem goes a bit farther than I think we might be aware of. So much are we merely concerned by things that appear but lack the substance that we can very easily be deceived as human beings. To trade gold for polished copper, because the gold might look dull, and dull gold doesn't look shiny or impressive. But polished copper looks amazing. And you'll find that as we go through life, we are constantly being faced with things that offer the appearance of God's plan, God's Edenic kingdom. That consummation, that thing we were made for, to dwell with Him in a place that is glorious, in relationship with Him forever. We are constantly being pummeled, time and time again, with counterfeit Edens, counterfeit heavens that are telling us, listen, if you buy into this, if you come into possession of this, you will have life. And it's made to appear like that. And the people who are in it look so happy, look so accomplished, look so satisfied. And there we go, deciding that actually, I can have it all right here. I can have it all now. I just need to move a few pieces. I just need to obtain a couple of things. And I can actually be able to enter into that Eden-like kingdom that actually all of us have been made for, and every single human being longs for. Then you end up trading what can be found in Christ alone, that in this world looks like dull gold. And you end up taking up cheap trinkets, polished copper, little things called gold-plated this and that. If you scratch with your little finger, there goes the gold. But it looks nice. It looks shiny. That is the ultimate temptation that every single person who commits to follow Jesus is going to have to face. So what am I seeking to convince us of as we look at the story of Abraham? Faith. Spoke about this hope, right? Faith in God's appointed seed looks like waiting for God's Edenic kingdom and turning from this world's false Edens. Can I say that again? Faith in God's appointed seed looks like waiting. You can just put a full stop there if you want a really short, memorable one. Faith in God's promised seed looks like waiting. If you have to double click on that waiting for God's Edenic kingdom and turning from this world's false Edens. That idea cuts right through the whole book of Genesis. You're going to be seeing it here, especially in Abraham. But this concept of choosing to wait is exactly what faith looks like. So what this does for us, just even as we're beginning, is it concretizes, if you so please, the idea of faith, makes it concrete. Because we can say, sorry, it's not loud enough. Sorry. It's making some noises. This does sound better. We can say, believe. But what does believing look like? I want you guys to go back to your schools being very, very clear on what believing looks like in your everyday life and across the scriptures, literally from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation. Belief looks like waiting for God to fulfill his promise. And unbelief looks like refusing to wait on God and instead taking some other thing, maneuvering, coming up with something that looks like what God has offered to us. Well, before we jump into chapter 12, get some context. We've skipped quite a few chapters in Genesis so far, right? Last we were together, we were in chapter 2 of Genesis. Now, voila, we're in chapter 12. So there's a few things that have happened. We won't talk about all of them. But quite importantly, context-wise, for chapter 12, you will notice that chapter 11 is that famous chapter. What is famous about chapter 11? The Tower of Babel. Remember the Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel is very interesting. It's like the beginning of Babylon in that regard, right? China and everything else that goes on there. But before that, you have chapter 10. And in chapter 10, you have what is famously known as the Table of Nations. I don't know if you studied this. Do you guys have CRE? Do you have religious education in your schools? No. They removed them? In Kenya, we still have a class called Christian Religious Education, where you just taught the Bible. Things have changed. So you guys are progressive out here. You even have a pastoral people instruction, where they just call pastors to come and take a whole 1 hour with the students. It's all just kind of fading though. Table of Nations. Look at chapter 10 with me. Context is what we're doing before we jump into chapter 12. These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. Another genealogy. Guys, I told you genealogies are fun, right? In the book of Genesis especially. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog. Don't call your child that, please. Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarma. The sons of Jivan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland peoples spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans, in their nations. It's very interesting what's going on here. Are you seeing what's happening? There's languages that are being formed. There's nations, and we are being told that they are now doing what? They're spreading. They're spreading. If you keep reading through this, you'll realize two things. You're not very good at pronunciation. It's the first thing you realize. I still remember when I preached through this in our church, I still have trauma about how much I struggled, right, with some of the names on this list. But you will also notice that as you're going through this, that there are 70 nations mentioned. 70. It's an important idea. This is when you see how the author again is arranging things. It actually doesn't necessarily mean that there were 70 and not 71 or 72 or 70. But the author here is describing to you all the nations that have spread, and he lists 70 of them particularly because of the idea of wholeness. The idea being communicated here is that there's a fullness to these nations that have spread. The idea of completeness, then you add a zero, creates completeness at a really mega level, right? And so here the concept again is, wow, look at the world. The world has been filled with all of these languages. It sounds very similar to what Noah has been told to do. Keep scrolling back a little bit and look at chapter 9. Right? The flood has happened. Man, there's so many cool things that go down here. I don't know who did this artwork. This is really epic, right? It can do you some good to just meditate on some of the artwork here in light of the book of Genesis and ask yourself, I wonder what that means. I wonder what that is capturing in light of what has actually been articulated. It can be a good way for you to continue to take the truths of the scripture and work them into your heart using everything that is around you, including that art. That is right there. So 9 has happened. Flood has happened. So many cool things there, right? We are disciplined, running away from all of those cool things to focus on 9:7. Look at what God tells Noah in 9:7. And you do what? Be fruitful and multiply and increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it. Sounds familiar? It's like we saw this somewhere, right? We saw this at the very beginning, right? I think it's 129. It's what Adam was told. It's like creation has just hit a reset. And then you get to chapter 10, and you're being told that the world is filled. Quite a few implications here. One massive implication, right, that would be very countercultural in the time of Exodus and the nations that are around them. What God is laying out here is that all peoples have one heritage, one source. It's a pretty big deal. That to you might sound normal, easy, but in that time, no, it wasn't. A lot of the massacres and genocides that would happen because you would typically identify your own heritage as being connected to the true God, and every other race is not connected to the true God. In some ways, every other race is subhuman. They're not as vital or as important. What God is laying out for here, that word anthropology, or an understanding of man, is that all men are from the same place. Men referencing mankind. From the same place, from the same source. So it does not matter which nation, which tribe, which tongue, it doesn't matter which location. In this particular passage we're reading, they have all come from Noah. And if you want to go all the way back again, they have all come from Adam. Here's creation with one root, and you're being shown that all these nations have filled the earth. And it begins to look as though this job is kind of getting done. It's kind of getting done. It's 70 nations. It's completeness at a mega level. But then chapter 10 is going to show us we have a little problem. Guys, we have a little problem. And that problem is caught in the name Nimrod. When you hear a name like Nimrod, you expect trouble. Listen to how these nations look. This guy kind of defines these nations. It says this in verse 8, Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. I don't know if you've ever, some of you think you're famous. But this guy was so famous. If you ever saw a mighty thing, you would say, like Nimrod. His name and his might was worked into language among people. He was great. He was mighty. And this idea here of before the Lord is almost like in his face. His might and his strength is not under the Lord, is not in line with the Lord. It's in his face, it's against him. It's not in trusting in him, in obeying him. His is a strength that will get things done his way. Do you see all the stuff he's done? Look at verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom. See, as a kingdom, this dude was Babel. Remember Babel? Erech, Akkad, Calneh, in the land of Shinar. And from that land he went into Assyria and built what? Nineveh. He built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. I don't know what you've been doing lately with your time. Nimrod built a couple of cities. Mighty Nimrod is getting things done. He is establishing a kingdom. What the author here wants us to know is these nations that have spread, these nations and languages that are filling the earth, don't look the way they were meant to look. The original plan that was given to Adam was that he was made in the image of God. Image of God. When you look at these people, what you're supposed to see is what? God. They were made in the image of God, and Adam and Eve were supposed to increase and multiply and fill the earth so that the earth would be filled with the glory of God revealed in the faces of his people. All these image bearers all over the world. But what has been happening is something different. The world is growing, nations are increasing, and they're even filling, but they're not filling with the kind of people that God has ordained. And for you to understand that well, chapter 11 does the whole Genesis chapter 2 thing. You remember Genesis chapter 2, what it did? Chapter 1 of Genesis started the story and finished the story of creation. And then chapter 2 said, hey, wait a minute, before we move forward, let's go back and we show you how things came to be like this. Creation began, creation completed, chapter 1. But chapter 2 goes back and it shows you, hey, there's some more information that you need to understand what that complete picture we gave you in chapter 1 actually looked like and got to be that way. And so chapter 2 takes a step back and double clicks on something, the creation of man, and fills it out. Genesis chapter 10 and chapter 11 do the exact same thing. Do you notice how they're describing nations that have done what? They have spread. Look, chapter 10, verse 1. Just look at that with me. These are the generation of the sons of Shem, right? And then that last portion there, it's describing that each, verse 5, each had their own language. So nations spreading, each possessing their own language. And then chapter 11, look at verse 1. Now the whole earth had what? One language. So we are going back to really before chapter 10, to show you this is actually how these nations spread. This is the source of those nations. What's the source of those nations? Babel. Babel is the source of chapter 10. Nimrod-like beginnings, where it's all about self-might, self-dependence, self-reliance, selfish ambition, self-glory, It's me, 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 me. I will show all of you how great God is. No. We will sing that song, how great I am, me. This is not what the world is meant to be. But that's what's spreading. This world is sick. This world is sin sick. This world is contrary to the plans of God. God's plan was spread and fill the earth. Have these people willingly heard God's plan and obeyed, multiply, increase, fill the earth? No, they have come together anti God's plan with their own plan to build up a tower to their own glory, contrary to the very will and decree of God. It's all about them. The scattering that now is defined in chapter 10 is a scattering that God has caused by thwarting their plans. And now the world is filled with these 70 nations that are Nimrod-like. That is the context of the promise of chapter 12. You hear this, and then we pause briefly. Chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abraham, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name what? Great. So that you will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Those words are cast exactly against the story of Nimrod and the story of those nations. So before we proceed, who do you trust in? Who do you trust in? What are you living for? Those who are trusting in themselves are quite busy building up a city for themselves, building up a name for themselves. God is not in view. Self is what is in view. It's a self-glory that those who have ceased to believe in God live for. It's a self-reliance, a self-dependence. It's a constant looking to what is in your hands. That is how that life is being lived. The people of God, throughout all of time, are not those who do so. I don't know where you're at. I don't know what defines your life. But this Nimrod-like aspiration for glory, for building up a name for yourself, is shown in every way to be a demonic thing, to be a satanic thing. That those who live in a world where they understand the reality of it is that there's two distinctions. There's one distinction between two things: the creator and the creature. The creator and the creature. And they dwell in that clear understanding that what I am is not the creator. I cannot build an Eden for myself. I cannot save myself. I cannot pull myself up with my bootstraps, as they say on the other side of the ocean. Through my hard work and my zeal and my, me. Look at what I have done. They will all marvel and bow down to who? To me. It might simply be just in Instagram likes that you realize in your own heart, even as a Christian, you go like, I'm noticing something here that's wrong. I'm caring so much to draw people's attention to who? To me. And as a Christian, you get convicted about that. And you go like, I don't like what I'm seeing in me. So many Christians have just ended up going like, I feel the temptation of posting this particular post so it can look a particular way so that people can me. And true believers wrestle with stuff like that. They do. They go like this. My life was not made for me or my glory. The life of the saint is not built on that kind of self-dependence. Let's keep reading. You've seen there already what chapter 12 is. Chapter 12 is a promise. What's this life of the Christian? It's all centered on a promise. We've already spoken about this promise. It's a looking to God to bring about his plan, his way, in his time. That will be the wrestling that's going on in the life of Abraham all the way through. All the way through. You've seen there how whilst Nimrod, we didn't read all the chapter 11 stuff, was seeking to make for himself a name, in chapter 12, God decrees that he will give a name to Abraham. See that big difference? It's a huge one. Nimrod, I will take it with my own might, and people will glorify who? Me. Abraham, I will give it to you, says the Lord, and I will make your name great. Can I throw out a principle that's pretty huge here? Life is given, not taken. Life is given, not taken. It's a huge principle in life. All that you have, it has been given to you. Do you know what that means? You have nothing to boast of. Because life has just those two pieces to it: creator and creature. Creator and creature. What creatures do is they trust in God. What creatures do is they look to God when it's a right relationship. But when they lose sight of God, the creatures begin to look to themselves. And they trust in themselves, and they believe in themselves, and they live for themselves, and they themselves, and the world goes amiss. But when they get everything is given, let me tell you what happens. You have nothing to boast about. What a life. Nothing. In Nairobi, in Swahili, we say, ni ya kupewa. It's been given. I don't know, what do you say? How do you say it's been given? That thing has been given to you in Zulu. How do you say that? Eh? Mwi? I'm just hearing rumors. Yes, shout it out loudly. Huh? Unikiwe. Unikiwe. It's not unikiwe. I should have done my homework. It's unikiwe. Can you boast in something that you've been given? Can you say to someone, unikiwe? You can't say that. Yes, one last comment.
You can say you come from the roots like isito is a gift. So if you're given something,
Upiwe. Good. Good. There ought to be the kind of language where you're able to say, you can't boast in that. Because that thing, we all know, it's a gift. You were just given it. Creature, creator distinction. Everything in your life. Everything. No mighty man before the Lord. What might? Which might? Where did it come from? And who are you? And where did you come? Not self. God is the roots of all of this. Notice the blessings. It's all nations that are in view here. You see there's one group there in chapter 10. That's the Nimrod-like group that was scattered by God. But chapter 12 marks a really huge thing because chapter 12 says God is going to create So to say, a new humanity. He's going to create a new humanity. And out of Abraham, if you keep reading chapter 15 and especially chapter 17, God will decree very clearly that out of Abraham will come nations and kings. But you have Abe, and then you have Nimrod. Abraham doesn't have a Nineveh or a Babel. Abraham, in fact, is being asked to leave his home, pack his bags, and go. From reading chapter 12, verse 1 to 3, it's not even quite clear where exactly he's going. It's a really interesting trip. Because it starts off and then the details keep getting clearer as he's going. I don't know if it was you and you were choosing between Abraham and Nimrod who you would follow. Nimrod. You're likely just being honest. Because if you compare the two, Abraham looks a bit like a fool. He's leaving everything, and he's simply doing so on the basis of a promise. But that promise is from God. The chapter is beautiful. If you just keep reading through it, you'll see he's wandering through the land, and there's going to be a lot of highlights with trees. And wherever he goes, he's setting up an altar. That's Abraham's journey. Track Abraham's journey. This is a good study for you to do for yourself. Highlight every place where trees are mentioned and altars, trees and altars, trees and altars, trees and altars, trees and altars. And you know what that is reminding you of and is pointing you back to? What? Eden. Because you know, of all the things that you could be told about Eden, what the author chose to tell you is that God filled Eden with what? All kinds of trees is one thing. And he was told that they could eat from any of them. And then there was a tree of life. And then there was a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So if you think about Eden, you think about trees. Here comes Abraham. He's given a promise. He's walking through the land. And what the author is highlighting for you again is tree, altar, tree, altar, tree, altar. Because that's what Eden looks like. And it's simply giving to us hints. And the question for Abraham and all those who are going to be the children of Abraham is, what do you do when you live in a land where all you have is a promise, but not the reality? What do you do when all you have is God's promise, but not the reality? And here's the answer. You believe in God. And what that looks like is you wait. Because the other option is to do the Nimrod thing. Don't wait, build now. Get it now. Notice what this faith looks like in chapter 13. The last portion there is a little beautiful story, by the way. If you want to see the similarities between the book of Exodus and the book of Genesis, read that story of Abraham going to Egypt. Assignment for you. And highlight what language sounds very Exodus-ish. I won't tell you the answer to that. It should just pop out at you and scream at you, going like, that sounds like Exodus. Yes, it's meant to. Chapter 13 has Lot, and it has Abraham. And what this story does is it highlights for us what this faith looks like in a world where what we have is a promise and not the reality. Abraham, as he's going through this land, is waiting for God to fulfill his promise that he will give that land to him. Chapter 13, verse 1 says, So Abraham went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the Negeb. Now, Abraham was very rich. That's not the point of this message. The people start fighting. Verse 8, Then Abraham said to Lot, Let there be no strife between you and me, between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. And if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot, listen to Lot, chapter 13, verse 10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere. Like what? Like the garden of the Lord. And then it has another phrase, like the land of, that's a bit confusing, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Did you hear the language being used for Lot? A couple of things to note about Lot. Here they are. They now cannot be able to dwell together because the Lord has blessed them with so much wealth. And Abraham says, anything, anywhere you want to go. Anywhere you want to go. You go this side, I'll go that side. And we are told that Lot, listen to that language, verse 10. He lifted up his eyes and he saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere. What does that sound like? You'd have to have really read Genesis to remember this properly. Who in the book of Genesis looked and saw and took? Who did that? It's Eve who did that. Looked, saw, took. Do you know if you go back to the story of the garden of the temptation of Eve, the tree that they were told that they should not eat of it is called the tree of what? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They're not meant to eat from it. Trust in God. Listen to God. If they just simply wait, and what's the temptation they're being given? If you do, you will become like God. There is some other idea here that is going to give to me that thing I long for, other than what God has called me to. And they look, they see, they take. Lot is being described in very, very similar ways. He looks, he sees, and he chooses it for himself. Look at what it says about him. So Lot chooses for himself all of the Jordan Valley, but verse 12, Abraham settled in the land of what? The land of promise, the land of Canaan. While Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners before the Lord. Abraham chooses to live like a pilgrim in the land of promise. Lot chooses to take for himself that Eden-looking land, even though it is filled with sin. Go back to chapter 12 and verse 8 and see the life of Abraham. And this was his life all the way as he continued to go through. Look at verse 8 of chapter 12. How did he go through this land? From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on his west and Ai on his east. You see what he's choosing to do? He can go to this city on his west, or he can go to this city on his east, and what does he choose to do instead? Stay in between them as a pilgrim. Abraham will not defile himself. He will wait for the promise of God. This looks appealing. This looks appealing. He would rather live in a tent as a pilgrim in the land than take that which looks like Eden, that which is offering a false promise, where he will not need to wait, where he can simply take, and he doesn't do so. You know how the story develops of Lot going to Sodom. How does that story end well? Those stories never end well. Lot is eventually rescued from that place. Those who believe in the promise of God's promised seed, they wait. They don't take. That seeing and being attracted by an Eden looking like thing that you can have it all now. It appears good. It will offer you all of the pleasure. It will offer you all of the satisfaction. It will offer you all of the comfort. You just have to trade a little thing. Waiting on God. You can have it all now. That exchange is what's going on here with Lot. What Abraham does all the way through is he keeps waiting on God, not perfectly. And I really like that the author of this book, Moses, shows us that this man is limping on a path of waiting on God. And many times he slips and even falls, but he gets back again and he continues to wait on God. And that becomes his path. What's tempting you right now? What is it that in your life is appearing like you can have it all now? You know the cost. Just abandon Jesus. Trade in Christ and your hope in him, and you can have it all now. All the pleasure, yours now. All the fame, yours now. You can be one of the cool kids. You can be in with the crew that really look like they have it all. Are you going to choose to trade waiting on God for his promises? Or are you going to take the false Eden offers of this world, where you look like actually the rest of us are still pilgrims in a hostile world, but you already arrived? This book is going to be filled with many images of that. We don't have time to look at all of them. One of my favorite ones is Genesis 22, verse 20-24. Don't go there. But if you note it down, 22, verses 20-24, it's after the sacrifice, right? He's been asked to take his son, his only son, and he's gone up the mountain and he's come back. I mean, Abraham has how many kids? One. I mean, you're already flipping, you disobedient students. Very quickly read these words. 20-24. It's an interesting little genealogy. These are always important in this book. Abraham has one child. How many children? And he almost died. And then look at how the author just adds in verse 20. Now, after these things, it's the whole Mount Moriah thing. It was told to Abraham, behold, by the way, behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Verse 21 to the end tells you the names of the kids. If you count those kids, how many are they? 12. 12 kids. Are you seeing a number 12 somewhere behind me? This is good art, I tell you guys, this is good art. Why is 12 important when you're talking about Israel? It's the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes of Israel. I mean, are you seeing what this is looking like? Like, wait, you left the land. And you went to follow God's promise. And what will he do for you? And he will multiply you. Chapter 15, verse 4 is the central verse. We haven't read it. Like the stars of the sky. Like the sands of the seashore. How is that waiting on God going for you so far? How many kids do you have? One. And who almost went? And what about Nahor? Did Nahor leave home? He didn't leave home. By the way, you as you're struggling out here, Nahor, Just one of his wives. 12 already. They have arrived. Whilst you're over here struggling. Those images are always being shown that the people who are trusting in God, the way their lives are looking like down here on earth, is they're struggling. They're pitching tents in valleys instead of the comfort of sin. They're dying to self. They're making choices to deny themselves so that they can wait on the promise of God. But those who haven't, it looks like their life is easy, like they're getting ahead. And that's the constant temptation. Will you continue to wait looking like a fool? Or will you quit on waiting and just settle in Sodom? Those are constantly the choices. Will you choose to follow God and experience all of the pilgrimage suffering of Abraham and decide that I will not accept an appearance of having arrived? The 12, but they're not God's 12. The nations that have filled the earth, the 70, but they're not of God. They're Nimrod-like. Let's read one last verse and land this plane. Go to Genesis 46 and see how this little story develops. This is 46, it's coming to an end. The children of Israel are about to go to Egypt now because Joseph has called them there. And chapter 46 and verse 26 comes after another genealogy. I told you this genealogy is important. And it's mentioning there the children of Israel. And now they're packing up their bags to go. Can someone tell me how many of them they were? Look at this verse 26. How many of them were they? All the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Joseph's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. I don't get to 70. And all the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were how many? Were 2. And all the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were how many? Were 70. You see the picture before? The picture before of chapter 10 was 70 nations Nimrod-like. Nations, tongues, and tribes. Chapter 12, God promises that he will build a nation out of Abraham. He promises him in chapter 15 that he will fill the earth with his people. And that's the idea of 70. And the idea here is that even though the Lord is working slowly by slowly, his promises to build a people for himself will indeed come to pass. God will not fail. The people he's writing to, who are able to look at themselves and go like, this is really hard, Moses. You're calling us to leave Egypt. You're calling us to go into the wilderness. You're calling us to trust that God indeed will give to us a land. What are they to do? They are to look at Abraham, an example of faith, and see that even though it looks hard, this God will fulfill his promises. And the day is going to come when the whole earth will be filled with his people. When Jesus rose from the grave, he tells his disciples to go into all nations and make disciples. And in the book of Acts, it keeps using the same language. The people increased and multiplied, increased and multiplied, increased and multiplied. Saints, we live in a time where what we are seeing after the resurrection of Christ is the fulfillment of the promise that he made to Abraham. He will get that job done. Do not abandon your faith so that you can settle in this land and join the Nimrod-like people of this world, in the cities of this world, and participate in the sins and vices and temptations of this world, and receive all of your pleasure and all of your reward. In which world? In this world. What faith in the promised seed looks like is wait. Wait for him to come, and your reward is going to be in him.